Hey everyone, welcome to the 5-Beer Plan. I'm Brian, and this is the ongoing saga of an everyman's ale trail. In this episode, I'll share some thoughts on the first year, finish up with Dan Potter from Archival Brewing in Belmont, Michigan, and review the Duke Says Nein from Archival Brewing. In this segment of Tales from the Trail, it's time to take a flight return to the year that was 2022. It's hard to believe that 12 months ago, I was releasing my teaser episode with more than a little bit of fear and trepidation. As a creative person, I'm no stranger to having my works laid out for all to hear or see. It's even scarier when you create content in a way that you've never done before that will live on forever in cyberspace. So first of all, I want to extend a huge thank you to each of my Barstool Banter guests this year. John, Chris at Brass Ring, Chris at Ice Tier, Mark at Adroit Theory, Josh at Chapman's, Spree, Corey at Twin Oast, Nick at Brewery Nick's, Ben at Albion Malibu, Linus at Tres Gatos, and Dan at Archival. Thank you each for taking time out of your busy schedules to sit down and talk about the unique approach each of you bring to the craft brewing industry. Keep up the great work. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have something new that you want to talk about or have a new beer you'd like me to review. Second, I want to raise a glass and say cheers to each and every one of you, the listener, who is tuning in to my ramblings over the past 12 months. By the time we wrap up the year, I'll have over 500 unique listens to the 24 episodes. That averages to about 20 listeners per episode, which wildly exceeds my expectations. So thank you. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm no expert when it comes to beer, but I am happy to share what I've learned along the way. Third, I hope you'll continue to listen in for the coming year and invite along a friend or two. The craft brewing industry is constantly changing, which leaves me a lot of topics for conversation. There continues to be an ongoing tension between the opening and closing of breweries, supply chain interruptions, employee retention, and of course brewers trying to stay true to who they are and not trying to keep up with the latest trends. I'm always on the lookout for places to visit and promote, so if there's a region or town you want me to check out, or even a unique twist on a brewery, please let me know. Fourth, it was great to hear from a couple of my listeners this season who had specific questions that they wanted me to explore and share. If you have topics in mind, or even ideas on how I can make things more relevant, interesting, or even more interactive to you, please contact me via Instagram, 5beerplan2022, or via email, 5beerplan@frontier.com. I'm always looking for ways to entertain and educate my audience. Plus, I love to learn new things. And finally, I'm going to mix things up a bit in the next season to keep the content fresh and engaging. Every other episode, I'm going to introduce a new segment called Looking for Lupulin, where I will highlight a hop variety and, if I'm able, review a beer that contains that specific single hop. I hope that you have enjoyed the first season of the 5-Beer Plan podcast and that you'll find the next season just as interesting. This week's hop hack is a continuation of my home brewing journey. Actually, I'm going to turn this into a short periodic segment called Homebrew Hijinks. I'm not sure how often it will get featured, but I'm looking forward to sharing my experience. This time, I'm going to review the instructions that came with my Northern Brewers Kama Citra Session IPA kit. So this particular set of instructions, basically it is 2.5 by 11 pieces of paper, front and back. So I guess I'm going to kind of treat this like I would my beer review. So there are two segments of this. The first is Brew Day, and the second is Bottling Day. So I've scanned through this. Looks like once you get through brew day, you leave your beer 14 days to ferment. And then after that, you bottle it. And then you leave it for another 2 weeks before you can refrigerate and enjoy it. So first off, some of the equipment that's necessary besides what came with the kit is that I need to have a pot that holds 2 gallons of water with a lid. I need to have a 1-gallon pitcher of some sort, timer, scissors, tablespoon, towel, dish rack, a couple of small bags of ice, and a kitchen spoon. So really, there isn't a whole lot that's required on my end. Fortunately, I have all this equipment on hand already, although I did end up purchasing a 1 gallon pitcher that I'm going to use exclusively for the brewing process. Really do hope that I can do this more than just one time. Honestly, the instructions are pretty straightforward. Next time, we'll actually talk about getting things ready for brew day. Now, it's time for Barstool Banter. This week, I'm wrapping up my conversation with the one and only Dan Potter from Archival Brewing in Belmont, Michigan. I just want to reiterate, if you are anywhere in the greater Grand Rapids, Michigan area for a beercation, don't overlook Archival Brewing. They have some really unique beers that you will never get anywhere else. So listen in as Dan and I talk about their distribution and several of the historical beers that they brew there. So you said you're going to have 4 at the moment that you're going to be canning up.
Yeah,
What are the 4 beers you're going to have as like your
certainly have
flagships then?
we've got our Kranz Kolsch.
Oh, I love that one. I had that one
Uh,
at Burning Fest.
oh God, yeah, we got a couple honorable mentions from your drinking buddies there.
Yeah,
They sold out of us there. Not only did I bring it to the pre-party for the volunteers the night before, they drank it all. They drank a keg of it, and then I brought one to the festival and drank all of that too. And I think another company, Better on Draft, listed us as one of the top 8 beers at the festival was that Kolsch. So we're excited to have
nice.
cans and put that into distribution.
Congrats.
Thank you. And then we're doing our Cloud Piercer, which is our New Zealand Pilsner, which is a great
Yep.
Pilsner beer featuring New Zealand hops, which has got a much bigger hop profile than most Pilsners. That one is a great beer too that people can't keep their hands off of once they try it. They
It's
just
amazing. I've had that one as well.
now, this one, I'm actually drinking one right now. And little kudos to one of your previous episodes about the American IPA. And this is our Fritz's Folly West Coast style IPA. I'm not sure if you're aware, but it's Fritz's Folly, named after Fritz Maytag, who was the brewer at Anchor Brewing Company that came up with the original recipe. And it's a Cascade only single hop variety West Coast IPA. And it's close to his recipe as we could make it. And that it's our only really American style IPA that we brew. It's a great one. Wait till you see the artwork on that, because what we're doing, we're actually telling a story through the artwork also. So instead of putting words telling the story on the can, we're telling it through the art. So it's really cool. There's a anchor on the beach with like a crab hanging off of it with the Golden Gate Bridge in the background.
Okay.
Gives that nod to Anchor Brewing, and obviously named after Fritz Maytag with Fritz's Folly, and a little West Coast vibe on it. So that
Cool.
one's really cool. And then currently we have our Theresa's Green, our Oktoberfest, which is a Marzen style fest beer. We'll have that until it's gone. And then I think I heard some rumors that we're putting our highly sought after Booster style beer, which is what we call a lost style of beer, because that was brewed in Germany pre-Reinheitsgebot, so before the purity laws were really kind of officially finalized in 1906, and they made any beer that didn't have water, grain, hops, or yeast in it ceased from production, and it came from the Kottbusser region of Germany, and it was a Kolsch style beer with added wheat, oats, honey, and molasses, and those ingredients violate the German purity law, so it was ceased from production. We called it the Duke Says Nein. He says you
I
can't
love
make
it.
that beer anymore, and that beer is still forgotten about style in Germany today. I met a guy at the Ypsilanti Summer Beer Festival that told me, "I am from Germany." He's like, "I live in Germany." And this style of beer is still forgotten about there today. And he thanked us repeatedly. He stood in line for 45 minutes to try that beer and told us the story. And he said that he'd always wanted to try the style. And one time he paid $250 going to a lottery, and he won. And he won that lottery, and that allowed him to pick the brewery's beer that they were going to brew that day on their small batch system. and he chose that style. And that was the first time I ever tried it. And he told me that this summer in Ypsilanti was the second time he ever had an opportunity to try that style of beer. So we won a gold medal in the World Expo of Beer this year for that, for the historical beer category.
Ah, congrats.
Rumor has it that we're putting that into six packs. So that's going to be really exciting, something you can't get from anyone else. Then the other rumor is that our Harwood Porter is going to go into six packs.
So at the moment, then, the only way you can get a hold of the beer in cans is at the tap room, then.
So we're in the tap room. There's a couple local Grand Rapids markets, and within the next couple weeks, they're going to be showing up on shelves. Also in the local Grand Rapids area. I'm gonna kind of start out with the party store across the street, and
Okay.
then just kind of keep going from there until we can hit as many places as we can before we run out of beer.
Excellent. Well, I'll have to try to get a hold of that cost booster style. That sounds really fantastic. I'm a big
Yeah,
fan of molasses, so if it's got
uh,
any kind of like a molasses tone to it, I mean, it's going to be amazing.
the molasses is great because it's subtle, but it kind of lingers right at the tail end of it, and
Hmm.
usually a Kolsch will have a nice bite on the end, and that bite's still there, but it kind of really just smooths it out and leaves a nice little lingering sweetness that doesn't stay there forever. It kind of does disappear, but it just hangs on for that little bit extra moment of enjoyment.
It sounds great. So you know a lot about brewing. Have you homebrewed yourself?
Yeah, I've home brewed. I've never professionally brewed,
Okay.
but I definitely have dabbled with the home brewing in the past, and had a lot of fun with it, and learned some things and learned some ways that you don't do it because it just doesn't work. And made some great beers, made some beers that were like, what the heck happened?
Have you helped out at all with the brewing there at Archival, other than just like hoisting bags or dumping things out?
No, I just sell the beers for them, and I think I'm their job security.
Hey, somebody's got to do that. And
That's right.
taste. I mean, you've got to be quality control too.
That's right. Hey, now, okay, I do help out on that aspect.
See, I think personally that would be like one of the best perks of working at a brewery is saying, "Hey, how's that coming? Is it ready to be tasted yet?" No, no, it's still got another 2 weeks. Oh man, that's the
No,
worst part is
that
the
is
waiting.
fun. I always appreciate it when like one of the brewers comes up to the tap room and they know I'm there and they'll bring me samples like, hey, you got to try this. This is blah 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 blah, and I'm like, oh, I get to try this right now. I tried one that we had put into barrels, and it was in barrels for about 4 or 5 months, and they had me taste it, and I was like, this might be one of the best things I've ever had. But then it stayed in the barrel for another 6 months.
Hmm.
I was telling everyone, "Oh man, we got this really great barrel age, blah blah blah, coming along," but it took about 6 months till it showed up. So
I think that's another thing that people don't realize is that brewing, it's a chemical reaction that you're doing, but it also takes time. You've got to be really, really patient. Time is the fifth ingredient to brewing.
I don't think Germany's gonna change their law for time, even though they might need to get that rid of that law. It's been long enough, but hey, it still makes good beer.
I love the story of people you run into that have run across the styles that you're putting out there. I remember, I think one of the first historical styles I ever had was probably a grisette, where
Oh,
basically they just throw whatever they want in, and it was kind of weird, kind of earthy, kind of muddy. It was different, but I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting, having a quote unquote historical style beer. Again, I love the fact that's what you guys are really focusing on there at the tap room.
yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I can't give away too much information, but I can tell you that we're gonna do a style of beer that pretty much nobody has ever heard of. And when Levi told me that, he's like, I can almost guarantee you that even you, Dan, have not heard of this beer. And I was like, all right, challenge accepted. Sounds exciting. And I think that a lot of other people might perk up some more ears across the industry. Like, wait, what is that? So that's going to be exciting. And I don't know the timeline on that, but I think we're starting to just tease people with the idea that, hey, well, there's something you've never heard of, and you think you haven't heard of this stuff? Just wait. We'll even stump your best beer buddies.
That's awesome, incredible. So Levi is your head brewer, and he's also co-owner,
Levi
right?
is Levi is kind of the brainchild behind the whole thing. Him and his wife Callie own the place. Our head brewer is Jake Steele. He comes to us from quite a diverse background of brewing, does a great job and nails them. I'm impressed every single time. But Levi's kind of the brainchild behind it. He's the one that finds the recipes and works with Jake on the different types of malt and yeast strains and things like that they're going to do. Kind of came up with the whole concept. He's the one that saw that there was really a lack of anybody in West Michigan that was doing historic beers. And then the other thing that he noticed is that there's nobody really distributing them in West Michigan or even really the entire state for that matter. The system that we have is set up to do things that other systems can't. We're set up to do triple decoctions. That's decoction brewing takes a lot more time, but we're doing it on quite a few beers on a regular basis, and it's just kind of been part of the brewer's day. They've just gotten used to it, and once they've really seen the final results that we're getting with these beer, putting that extra time into them, they're kind of sold on the idea that, hey, it's going to take longer, but it's worth it.
Tell me what the triple decoction is. I've never heard of that terminology before.
So the decoction is, in layman terms, you're going to take part of the wort and you're going to put it back into the mash and kind of filter it back through. Again, the idea originally was because you didn't have these modern day, natural gas heating elements that we have. So in order to keep it to the temperature that you needed, you had to take the wort off the boil, put it back through the mash, collect it
Okay.
after it filters through, put it back into the pot and keep it going. Traditionally they used like hot stones and they put it into the kettle to keep temperatures up and do things like that. So, you can do a single decoction, a double decoction, or a triple decoction. So, you can kind of imagine that each time you're doing another one, completely extends the process for the day by hours and hours.
Thank you. I learned something new today. What is your favorite style of beer?
I don't know if I have a go-to, which is kind of everybody's when you walk into a new place and you're like, all right, look at all those tap handles. And you're like, I know that one. And, usually it's just a nice clean IPA. That's always my easy go-to. But I feel like the more and more I have been getting into beer and even now working with Archival, I tend to be going towards some of the more simple styles. Like I'll be like, holy crap, someone's got a Kolsch. I got to try that. I just went to Colorado and there's a brewery out there, Prost, and they do all German beers and
Yep,
tried their Kolsch and it was good.
I'll
But,
bet.
but I was like, man, ours is better. And I was like, am I biased now?
For me, the same. I don't really have a go-to necessarily. I certainly will try the lager, the pilsner, the kolsch, whatever the lighter beer is at a brewery, just as a kickoff, just to like see, okay, well, is it good? Is it not good? If somebody's got a great taste in kolsch, my curiosity's peaked because if you can do that well,
I think a lot of people they don't know or they don't realize that sometimes you go into these craft breweries and if you order that lager style, it's really going to showcase the brewer's abilities because they are actually harder to make.
yes,
So you walk in and you have a really good pilsner or a really great Kolsch or something along that lines of Vienna lager, and you're sitting there going, "Holy crap, this is good."
yeah,
That's a testament to the brewer's ability. And I think that if they can nail that, then everything else is probably going to be on point also.
right. You can hide behind an IPA or a stout or something like that. You can add some adjuncts and whatnot, but when you get to those clean styles, you're basically, running around naked, brewing, right? So,
That's a great way to put it.
is there a least favorite style that you have?
Naked beers. Yep. My least favorite style is bad beer.
Okay.
There's a lot of it out there, and I never point out any names, but sometimes you come across something and you're like, "Oh, why did they do that? They shouldn't have done this. This is not my really least favorite style." I'm not a big fan of people putting hot peppers into my beer. I have had some really, dark and delicious beers that they have some peppers mixed in there that they're very subtle maybe a Chipotle or something, and you barely notice it, and like that's okay. But if this beer's in your face with something spicy, and especially if you're at one of these big beer tasting events or beer festivals, and you take a sip out of one and your palate's wrecked for a half an hour, it really diminishes everything. So I'd say pepper beers are my absolute least favorite.
I can appreciate and understand that. Is there a beer out there that you've always wanted to try, but due to distribution or maybe seasonal nature, you haven't been able to get a hold of it?
Most definitely. I think that the one that really stands out for me is probably Pliny the Younger,
Mm-hmm.
because I've never been to California, and I don't think anybody can mule it to me fast enough for it to be fresh. I need to go there and try it and do it right. I think when I go to California, that's gonna be like the top thing on my list to go do. And I gotta time it to the right season too. So
Exactly. That's high on my list as well. So if you're ready for a road trip at some point, let me know. All right. So one last fun question I always ask everybody I interview. If you were a beer, what style would you be and why?
I tried to wrap my brain around this one too. And instead, I found myself just studying all the beer styles again and trying to figure out which one matched me the best. I'd have to go with something, some sort of wild ale, something that's, open fermented. It's got a bunch of spores that could be seasonal, could be whatever else. But being from Michigan, I feel like every season brings a different beer, and one of my favorite times of the year is summer, and usually that's when the sour beers come out, and that's usually one of my go-to things in the summer is those wonderful tart tasting funky beers. And sometimes I feel a little funky myself. So
I love that. Another question just came to my mind. Do you ever any plans to get a cool ship there at the brewery?
we actually have one.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, we
Nice.
most definitely do. We've got all the toys.
Okay.
One of the local brewery, Speciation Cellars, familiar with them?
Yes, sir.
We've already done collabs with them, and I think they've even come over and used our cool ship before at on other occasions. That's one of the neat, cool things that we do have. Another one of the neat, cool things that we have that may be part of that upcoming project that I was teasing to you earlier is we have a couple of fermentation vessels known as amphoras, and the amphoras are terra clay pot fermentation vessels. So we do have some projects with those that are going to be upcoming, and those are pretty rare. Not a lot of breweries have those either. I think we had to get those from India or something along that
Wow.
nature.
How
So
large are the vessels themselves? I've never heard of an amphora myself.
these amphoras, if I were to guess, they're probably somewhere between 7 and 10 barrel fermentation vessels, and we've got two of those. So nice, cool little small batch stuff. Terra clay is a lot more porous and changes things. Everything's different. There's a couple different breweries in the United States that do use them for beer production, but most people use them for wine production.
Okay.
It's going to be an interesting project. We'll see how that goes, and I'm excited for that when we get to that point. And they're really cool because the way that they sit, you can actually harvest the yeast from the bottom of them pretty easily, and continue to use them and just continue doing different ongoing projects with them. So that should be cool. So we've got the
Excellent.
cool ship, we've got amphoras, we've got all kinds of fun stuff.
Do I remember that you actually have a cask engine as well in the
We
brewery?
do. So we actually have six beer engines. So we can put six different cask or firkins on at once. We have not started that yet, but hopefully we will soon. We've been kind of back ordered on the parts since before the brewery opened. So hopefully it doesn't take a year and a half, 2 years to get the parts, because we sure would like to have some beers on those hand pumps.
Yeah, there's nothing like it, honestly. So
Yeah,
very
a
cool.
lot of people don't even know what they are. It blows my mind. So
Yeah, so another one of your local breweries there, Brass Ring. I don't know if you've ever been out there before.
yeah,
Chris does a hell of a good job with his cask conditioned beers, and I just love, yeah, I've never had an IPA that wasn't, carbonated that just was pumped like that, and I mean it's so much better.
it really is. People ask us, "Oh, you're gonna have nitro beers," and we're like, "No, No, but we've got some hand pulls we'll get going soon. So
Yeah. I
that's
think I think that's another thing that I really appreciate about what you're doing there at Archival is you're not really it's no frills. It's all just what you see is what you get kind of stuff, which I can appreciate.
yeah, it's great. They've really kind of knocked it out of the park with this one.
Well, hey Dan, I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. I look forward to hopefully at some point maybe raising a glass again with you,
Yeah,
and
that'd be
look
great.
forward maybe to seeing you at one of these Michigan Beer Fest.
That'd be awesome. Well, thanks for having me on. Appreciate the opportunity. I could talk about beer all day long. So anytime you want to chat again, feel free.
Hey, really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian.
Last call.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. This episode, I'm drinking the Duke Says Nein from Archival Brewing in Belmont, Michigan. This is a Kottbusser style beer. From the brewer, the Duke of Bavaria was ultimately the reason for the Reinheitsgebot, otherwise known as the German purity law, effectively putting out of production brews such as the Kostbusser. Brewed with the traditional wheat, oats, honey, and molasses, the Duke Says Nein is a clean lager with Kolsch yeast, light and refreshing. Just to make sure that everyone's on the same page here, the German purity law was issued in April 1516 by the Bavarian Duke Wilhelm IV. It stipulated that only water, barley, and hops were allowed to be used as key ingredients for beer production. This was introduced to achieve a consistent level of quality in beer brewing. The important role that yeast plays in brewing was really only recognized in the 19th century. Without further delay, so I'm going to pour this out into a nice Pilsner glass. I feel like this is kind of a glass that might be used for special regal kind of beer. It pours out a nice kind of deep golden color. It has a little bit of effervescence. It's got a nice, generous foam head on it. It's got an almost honey sort of profile in the nose, a little bit of sweetness to it, and part of that could be coming from the Kolsch yeast as well. So first sip impression, it's definitely got that nice Kolsch kind of profile to it. Very smooth, very clean. Definitely can taste the honey in there. Even I think get a little bit of the molasses too, just a tiny bit there at the end. It's got a nice crispness to it. It's as I said, it's clean looking, aromatic, a little bit of a fruity nose. This beer clocks in at 6% ABV, so it's definitely one that is sessionable, one that's certainly crushable. More and more, I find myself gravitating towards beers like the Kolsch or this Kottbusser. It's just so nice and light, and as I've talked with many brewers before, it really highlights the talent with which a brewer brews. If you can do a Kolsch or a lager or pilsner really well, I know that you've got game on the brewing scene. This is such a great beer. Hard to believe that this was put out of production in Germany back in the 1500s. Great, great beer. The Everyman says yeah. I give this one 4 tasters out of 5 on the flight board. Cheers, Archival. Again, I want to give a big shout out to the Danimal for giving the Everyman this excellent historical brew to review. If you've got a beer you'd like me to drink and describe, leave a comment below. If you're a brewer and have one in mind, direct message me on Instagram and let's see what we can do. That's all for this episode of the 5 Beer Plan. With so many podcasts out there, thanks for choosing to listen to mine. Join me next time for my first segment of Looking for Lupulin, continue my homebrew adventure, and sit down with Chris and Trevor from One Well Brewing in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Remember to hit the subscribe button to be notified of new episodes. I'd love to hear from you, so please follow me on Instagram, 5beerplan2022, and leave a comment to let me know what your favorite interview was this year. Be sure to support your local breweries, choose your beers wisely, and drink them responsibly. Until next time, keep walking your ale trail, and stay thirsty, my friends. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house many critters were stirring, including a mouse. The stockings were stuffed with craft beer and flair, in hopes that Dan Potter soon would be there. The drinkers were nestled all snug in their chairs, while visions of spiced ale danced in their hairs. My Biersky in his kerchief, and I in my ball cap, had just settled our thoughts on a long-ass nightcap. When out on the roof there arose such a clatter, I fell out of my seat and was soon drenched in beer splatter. Away to the window I lurched like a bear, tore open the shutter, and slipped on a pear. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave the sense of midday to my brain that was slow. When what to my hazy eye should appear but a gigantic brew kettle and 8 drunken reindeer. With a large bearded driver, so loaded and rammy, I knew in a moment it must be my friend Danny. More slowly than sloths, his coursers they came, and he snickered and shouted and called them by name. Now Iced here, now Brass Ring, now Adroit and Harry, on Chapman's, on Twin Oust, Tres Gatos and Nicks. To the top of the porch, to the top of the stall, now drink away, drink away, drink away all. As dry hops that into the cooled wort will fly, when they come to a hurdle, shoot for the sky. So up to the rooftop the reindeer they flew, with a keg full of beer and good old Danny too. But ho! In an instant I heard on the roof the tripping and laughing of each little hoof. As I pulled in my head and tottered around, down the chimney Mr. Potter fell with much sound. He was dressed like a meatball from his head to his foot, and his robes were all dirty with barley and soot. A shitload of good beer he had flung on his back, and he looked like a saint as he opened that pack. His eyes, they were glassy, his eyebrows how merry! His cheeks were quite rosy, his nose like a cherry. His broad goofy mouth was drawn up in a U, and the beard on his face had tidbits of brew. The stump of a pipe hung slack from his teeth, and the smoke it released stank truly of beef. He had a large face and a nice muffin top that shook when he laughed like a keg of wet hops. He was happy and plump, a right drunken court jester, and I laughed when I saw him just like Uncle Fester. A Jack Nicholson eye and a nod of his head soon gave me to know the best was ahead. He slurred several words and spoke to the crew, filling all glasses with the freshest of brew. Then poking a finger right into his navel, he popped up the chimney like some screwball old fable. He fell into his kettle and belched like a sailor, while those 8 crazy deer peeled out with the trailer. But I heard him exclaim as he flew out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." Have a safe and wonderful holiday, everyone. Cheers! Special thanks to PorchDrinking.com for a fun adaptation of the classic poem by Clement Clark Moore. Slight modification of the poem by me, and apologies to Dan Potter, who embodies the spirit and joy of beer. Thank you, my friend.